right, how's everybody doing this afternoon? Good. Appreciate you guys coming out. 2 o'clock, we're going to start our seminar on how to choose the correct rod and what it means when you pick it up and you look at it and it tells you something like it's a medium heavy or something like that. We're going to explain to you what all that means. So I'm Daniel Peacott. I've been doing this now for Bass Pro for about 8 years, and I just started up my own YouTube channel called Bass in Southwest. So we're going to film this for you guys so that if you want to see it later or have any questions, it'll be on there for you there as well. So we'll let Max introduce himself, and then we'll get started on what we're doing. And also, sorry, Max. Sorry. We've got some flashlights being handed out by Jess here. If you guys want to stay and hang out and get a free flashlight, we got that going too.
Hi, my name is Max Hernandez. I just joined the Nitro Bass Pro team here this past year. Excited to be here, excited to be doing these seminars, showing you guys what we know and help you guys, out on the water or out in the lake or, fishing. So go ahead and I'll let you start.
All right, guys. So when you pick up a rod like this, you got all this lettering under here. And we're going to try to explain our best to you what all that means and how we go about choosing a fishing rod for what we like to do. So for instance, you got a model number. That's not too important to us. But then it gives you a length, a lure weight recommendation, a line weight recommendation, which again are not necessarily that important, but then we get to the power of a rod and the action of a rod, okay? And what that means basically is how much pressure you're going to be able to put on a fish or something like that with the power. The action is how it reacts with a lure and stuff on there. So let's just go ahead and start off first thing with power. They're going to range anywhere from like an ultralight power all the way up to an extra heavy power. And all that means is you want to flex that tip there. How much pressure it's going to take to make this rod deflect like that. Now, if this was an ultralight rod, we could bend it with very minimal pressure at all. Whereas with the extra heavy, which this one being just a medium heavy, we would really, between the two of us, we would have to put a lot of pressure to get that rod to bend at all. And what that means to you is, for instance, if I'm throwing this rattle trap here, it's got little tiny treble hooks on there, okay? They're not very thick diameter, they're not very strong. So if I'm going to take an extra heavy fishing rod and try to throw that on there, when I hook a fish, I can put so much pressure on there, I can bend and break those hooks. So you don't want to do that. So when it comes to power, you have to look at what you're going to throw and then decide how much power you're going to need for that technique. So then on action-wise, the action or the taper, you may hear it called, essentially is the size of the butt end of the rod to the tip. So if you have like a 1/2 inch at the butt end and like 5 millimeters at the tip, that would be a fast action rod or something like that. He's good. Whereas if you had like a 0.40 inch but to a 6 millimeter tip, that's going to slow your action down. And all that means, if you want to flex that again, Max, is how far this rod is going to bend before you get to the really stiff part that doesn't bend to your backbone, okay? With an extra fast action rod, it's all tip. You're only going to bend in like that top 20% of your tip of your rod. Good for things like jigs, something you got to drive a big hook home through. Whereas on the other end of that, a slower action or a more moderate action, it'll bend even further down into the rod and not quite put as much pressure like a treble hook braid or something. So that's explaining power and action to you, and I'll let Max dive into what he likes to throw certain baits on, powers and action wise, to optimize whatever bait he is throwing at the time to not only be able to cast a lure, retrieve a lure, hook a fish, and then land a fish, because it matters on all of that. Anytime you can increase your chances with all that, with your equipment, you're doing good. So we'll let Max talk now about what he likes to use for what.
Hello? Okay. All right. Exactly what he was talking about. Like on a jerkbait rod, I like to use a little bit of shorter rod because I'm working the action down here as I'm reeling it. You get too long of a rod. You know, I guess it all depends on, some guys like to use 7 foot. This one's a 6'8". It's perfect for my height when I'm on the boat. As far as the action, it's a medium fast. So these jerk baits, I got these bent down because of the fish, but these jerk baits tend to have a lot smaller treble hooks. And when you catch a bass, they tend to spit or throw the crankbaits or jerk baits a lot easier with a treble hook than they do with a single hook, like a punch hook or something like that. So if I was to throw this on a stiffer rod, when they come out of the water and they throw their head, this rod doesn't have fast enough tip to take up that. So imagine the fish coming out of the water and he's throwing his head, you know, this will stay with them the whole time and keep that treble hook pinned in their mouth a lot easier than like say a stiffer rod would. So that's like baits. Like I said, I'm medium fast. I didn't bring my big cranking rod. The cranking rods are, I usually throw like a 7.2 crank, and they have a lot more glass in them, so they have a lot. This one has a bit, but the parabolic end is a lot more in a big cranking rod than it is, say, a jig rod or a punch rod. So I'll let you go ahead and talk about yours right there.
All right, so the same thing like Max was saying, with a treble bait, you need a lighter power and a lighter action rod, so that you don't bend out hooks and do things like that on hooks. But also, when it comes to castability, these lures we cast are not that heavy. If you have a super stiff rod, it'll never load up and be able to help you fling that lure out there. So you have to also balance that into your equation. And then also, for instance, if you're working that you're winding in really fast and you have a super stiff rod, it's also going to make it harder for that fish to really swallow it deep, and you get hooked good. You'll get a lot outside the mouths and right on the lip, and you lose fish. Nobody wants to lose fish. If you're casting, you need a rod that's going to load up and cast your bait well. On the retreat, you need to be able to work the lure correctly, and then you need to have enough power to set the hook. So on the opposite side of this, go with too light of a rod, they can suck it down good and whatever, but then when you the hook, you don't get good hook penetration in their mouths. So there's a balance between both. And then again, with fighting to the boat, you need a rod that's going to have some give on the treble hook bait so that it's not pulling out of their mouth. So I'm gonna kind of walk around while Max talks again and let you guys see the difference in these two rods. Now these both say they're a medium heavy rod on it, and I think that's something we need to talk about too, is every rod manufacturer is different. The way they classify things is just, there's no industry standard. So you really have to get your hand on the rod and experiment a little bit and figure out which one's gonna work best. But these both say medium heavy. One's a 7, one is a 6'8", but I'll let you guys on these lures, there's no hook on them, and you tell me what you feel. Max will continue to talk about what he's got going on, but we'll do a little demo on what you think for both.
Yeah, so aside from, on the rod, it shows, what kind of line specifications that rod is made for, but when like, for example, crankbaits, if you could have the same rod, same action, same everything. You have a reel tied up with 8-pound test. This crank is going to dive 12 feet. You have a 10-pound or 12-pound test. It's going to dive 9 to 10 feet. You run 17-pound test because you're fishing. You're trying to rip this through, submerged brush or something like that, and you don't want to get snagged and break off. 17 feet. A 10, 12-foot diver is only going to go, 6, 7, 8 feet, at the most. So line choice also, as far as rod choice, depending on what you're fishing and how you want to fish that bait is a big difference too. So the lighter the line, the deeper your hard baits are going to go. The heavier the line, the shallower they're going to go. So you can run, like I said, you can run the exact same rod, exact same bait, but different line thicknesses, pounds, and the bait will run shallow, run deeper. So as far as like we're talking about medium heavies, like I have a 7'11", I can bring it with me, but 7'11" punch rod, I'll throw ounce and a half, 2 ounce punch weight, and just to get through the real mat that's there. And I mean it's like in the back of the coves or the matted grass, it's really thick, and those bass like to sit underneath that shade unless you're throwing something heavy, 100 ounce and a half to 2 ounce. Yes, heavy, so once it punches through, it sinks down pretty fast, but usually you're in probably less than 8 feet of water. So the reason you're throwing that heavy is just to break through the surface, and once it goes, usually you fall it down, you feel it hit the bottom. And a lot of times you'll pick it up right there, or when you pick it up, it's coming straight up the same hole it went through. So you bring it up and drop down, and then you can feel them bite. When you bite, that's why we're using on something like that. You're using a longer rod to be able to whip out and get in those spots, but also I'm using it extra heavy because I'm using usually 60 to 80 pound braid, and you get 5 pound bass, but once you get through that grass or those weeds or you're bring 10 pounds of that with it. So you're actually pulling 10, 15 pounds, not just the fish, but all the vegetation with it. And you want something with a really good backbone where you can put the hook and get them through back to you. So I talked about the 11, like the punching versus, yeah.
Cool. So another thing, when it comes to length, you can come anywhere from 6 feet to, I think, like 9.5 feet. Now they just changed some rules and allowed manufacturers to start making like 9.5 foot rods. When it comes to length, it's also a lot about presentation and hook power. Again, it's a whole system from cast landing that fish. So as Max said with his jerkbait rod, it's a little bit shorter because you're pointing it at the rod and you're twitching it. On the other side of things, if you're going to fish out in super deep water, a little extra length helps you out, because on that arc, as you pull your rod up, this is a 6'6", well, a 7'6", you're moving that much more line as you set the hook. And sometimes when the fish are deep, there's a big bow in your line, and you pull all that slack out to get the hook and engage the fish. So that's a big deal too. And another thing on it is casting. His 7'11" heavy thing, you can fling a lure a mile, and for the same reason, with a 6 rod, and you go to fling it, you're only moving so much at that tip. You add another 1.5 feet to that, now the tip of that rod is screaming. It's and it gives you that much more energy into your lure, and you can fling them deep crankbait a long way. So the whole system, you have to look at the whole from landing the fish and picking a rod going to be very specific to that technique. Why you see us with multiple rods in our boats, because we will do certain things with certain rods, but then also have backups to those. So when you see a pro out there with 30 rods on his deck, you bet he can tell you why he got each one the way that he's got it. So another thing we'll talk to you guys about, you got casting rods, bait casting here with the little spinning rod like Max is here. And these play into it as well. Bait caster is most of our go-tos, because you can be super accurate with them. With your thumb on there, you can control your line. So if I want to, flip a bait into a coffee can, I can do that from here to, the candy section pretty consistently, at least be really close to it. Whereas the spinning reel, that's harder. But on the other side of things, with a spinning reel, you can cast little light baits like this drop shot or a Ned rig, you can fling them out there a lot further because there's no resistance here. This line coming off the spool. Whereas in this, you actually have to turn the spool and get it that way. So lightweight stuff we tend to throw here, and more powerful stuff here. So jigs, crankbaits, things like that we generally do here. The finesse style stuff we do there.
Yeah, so another thing too, the difference between the two, like fish, if you're out fishing deep, at the point of entry, when your bait hits the water, there's a lot of times that you don't want it to pendulum. So, for example, just pretend the tip of the rod is the entry of the bait in the water. With the spin cast reel, you're able to have it, and it just falls. As soon as it falls and goes straight down to that spot. So where a lot of times, if you're fishing 50, 60 feet deep with a bait caster, when you cast it out, it hits, and then it'll actually pendulum back towards the boat. So by the time it actually hits the bottom, if you're not peeling line off fast enough, by the time it hits the bottom until you cast out 90 feet, and it's 60 feet down, if you don't allow it to down, and you allow it to pendulum back to you, by the time it hits the boat, it's only 15, 20 feet from the boat. So, in those instances, that's using a spin cast versus a bait caster. A lot of, like, Canyon Lake has a lot of canyon walls. And one example, I took a buddy of mine out, never been fishing. I think it was the first time I met him. I met his friend and had him in the back seat, took him to Canyon. And I was on a bite, and against canyon walls that were like 15, 20 foot to the shelf. All day long I was catching fish, one after another, and he was getting to the point he wanted to go home. You're not going home. You haven't caught anything yet. So with our earlier presentation, we were talking about trolling motors. So I stood on the back of the boat and I had my remote control, and I was operating a trolling motor. Because I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe I'm just catching everything in front of him. And not even 5 minutes into stopping where he's in front, I was still catching one right after another. So then I stopped fishing and I actually looked at what he was doing. And we were pitching it right. Those fish were within a foot of the base of the cliff wall. And when I sat back and actually watched what he was doing, that's where this whole pendulum thing comes into effect. Because he was casting right up against the wall, but he wasn't allowing it to sink straight down. It was pendulum back. By the time it was 10 feet from the boat. And so here's the cliff wall. This is where the fish are at, hitting here. But by the time it came here, by the time it hit the bottom, it was way over here, and it wasn't even anywhere near the fish. So once I saw what he was doing, I kind of guide him to get it to fall straight down, and immediately he started catching fish. So that's a huge difference between allowing that bait to fall in something like that versus, you do it with a bait caster. You just have to be able to strip, feed it. If you wait too long, if you wait for it to get tight, every time it gets tight, it pendulums. It gets tight, it pendulums. So it's still doing the same thing, just not a rapid motion. So.
And along with that, if you are moving that rod and that line yourself, it becomes unnatural. You want it to fall on that slack line so that lure can have a very natural look as it hits the bottom. If you're herky with it, it like stops and does weird things that maybe aren't so natural when it comes to your presentation. That all you got for it?
Pretty much.
So, cool. So that's pretty good indication. Powers and actions and stuff. You got more questions? We're going to be here for a while. Come up and do it. And we'll try to get you guys all lined out. We got some shirts up here. Max has some baits up here. If you guys check those out too. Yeah, and that's all we got for now. I'll probably stay here a little bit longer. I think Max can head off to the boat show.
Yeah.
But if you guys have any questions at all, period, about fishing, come up and ask me. I'll try to get you guys lined out.
Want to throw any baits in the tank?
Thanks. Yeah, we can do that, but just while we're doing it.
Okay.
Yeah. We appreciate you guys coming out. We'll be here to talk and stuff. We'll get some baits in here, some flood around, and you guys can watch the fish eat too while we that. So
yeah. And for any that are interested, I know these carbon lights are on sale right now. There's a lot of fish stuff that's on sale right now with the rental store, but go check them out. These are really good rods. My opinion, they're the base level entry, but they're a lot better than most places you can get, and they're really affordable. They good action. So some of these baits that I have picked up are up here too. So let's see, what's the question to ask them? Just give away. Who could tell me? How about? No, I want somebody. I want. What you would throw a. That's probably too hard. Okay. On a drop shot, I'm gonna give you 3 choices. 7, 6, medium, heavy, moderate, 7 foot, medium, fast, or a 6, 8, medium. Which one would you throw a drop shot on? There you go. Oh, okay.
And then again, we've already kind of talked about it, but let's if we were going to be throwing that rattle trap that I showed you, what power and action rod would you go with? You want to go with a 7-foot heavy action, fast action rod, a 6.5-foot medium heavy fast action rod, or a 7-foot medium action or medium power and moderate action rod? Say that again. 7-foot medium, moderate. Yeah. Yep. So, what's that shirt you wear? Extra large. Okay. Cool. Again, guys, thanks for coming out. We really appreciate it. Come up, ask us some questions.
You're welcome.
And we'll get.
Anybody else want a koozie? There you go. I'm going to throw a couple of baits in the tank if you guys watch. I don't know if they'll eat, but it's fun to watch.